My jealous stepsister stole my wealthy husband and kicked me out of the house. After 5 years, she met me at a restaurant and said, "You're still single and working as a waitress?" I laughed. She threw cold water on me, so I called security. She was stunned and dropped to her knees, begging for forgiveness. Then my husband stepped forward. Sophia sat in a quiet corner of her restaurant, her fingers gently tracing the rim of her coffee cup. The dim golden light reflected on the glass walls, giving the place a warm, elegant glow. She took a deep breath and let out a small, almost nostalgic smile before she began speaking. "You know, life has a way of teaching us lessons in the most brutal ways. If you had told me years ago that I would be sitting here telling my story, I would have laughed. Back then, I believed in love, in trust, in the promises people made. I was naive, but life showed me the truth." She paused for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts, then continued, her voice steady but filled with memories. "I was married once, to a man I loved with all my heart. His name was Daniel. He was charming, successful, and had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the world. When we got married, I thought I had everything: a loving husband, a beautiful home, and a future filled with happiness. I worked hard, too. I wasn't the kind of woman to sit back and rely on my husband's wealth. I had experience in hotel management, and I loved my work. I dedicated myself to helping Daniel with his businesses, making sure everything was running smoothly. But I never realized that while I was busy building our life, someone else was busy destroying it." Sophia's expression darkened slightly as she leaned back, exhaling deeply. "My stepsister, Emma. We weren't close growing up, but I never thought she would betray me like she did. She always had this jealousy in her eyes. No matter what I did, she always wanted more." "And Daniel?" He fell right into her trap. I should have noticed the small things, the way she looked at him, the secretive smiles they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. But I trusted them. I trusted my husband. I trusted my own family." She let out a bitter chuckle, shaking her head. "Then one day, everything changed. Daniel started acting differently. He became distant, cold. The man who once held my hand and promised me forever now barely looked at me. I asked him what was wrong, but he always had some excuse. 'Work stress,' he said. 'Business pressure.' But I knew something was off. And then, one evening, he just said it: 'I want a divorce.' Just like that. No explanation, no remorse. Just a simple statement that shattered my world." Sophia's fingers tightened around her cup as her voice dropped lower. I begged him to tell me why. I asked him if I had done something wrong, if I had failed him in some way. And then she walked in. Emma. Smiling. Standing beside my husband like she had every right to be there. And when I looked at Daniel, I saw the truth in his eyes. He had already replaced me. My own sister had stolen my husband. She inhaled sharply, pushing back the emotions threatening to surface. I screamed, I cried, but they didn't care. They laughed. They actually laughed at me, as if I was nothing more than an inconvenience in their perfect little world. Emma smirked, resting her hand on Daniel's shoulder, as if to prove that she had won. And Daniel? He just told me to pack my things and leave. My own home. The place I had built with him. He threw me out like I was nothing. Her voice wavered for a second, but she quickly steadied herself. That night, I walked out with nothing but the clothes on my back. I had no home, no money, no one to turn to. I was completely alone. I remember standing on the street, feeling the cold wind against my skin, wondering how my life had fallen apart so quickly. I could have given up. I could have let them break me, but I didn't. Something inside me refused to let them win. A faint smile played on her lips, but her eyes held a storm of memories. I had experience in hotel management, and I knew I had to start over. I went from one hotel to another, looking for a job. It wasn't easy. Some places turned me away, others offered positions far below what I was qualified for. But I took what I could get. I worked as a receptionist, then a hotel supervisor. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I refused to be a victim. She took another deep breath, her expression hardening. And then, one day, my hard work paid off. That's when I met Ryan, a powerful businessman, owner of one of the most luxurious hotel chains in New York. He wasn't just another wealthy man, he was smart, kind, and respected my talent. He saw potential in me when no one else did. I started working for him, and for the first time in a long time, I felt valued. I wasn't just someone's abandoned wife. I was Sophia, the woman who refused to break. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes gleaming with quiet strength. But life wasn't done with me yet. Fate had something planned, something that would bring me face to face with my past in the most unexpected way. And when that moment came, I knew I would finally get the justice I deserved. Starting over wasn't easy. The first few months were the hardest. I had no money, no home, and no one to rely on. The pain of betrayal burned inside me every single day, but I refused to let it consume me. I told myself that I had two choices. I could sit in my misery and let Daniel and Emma win, or I could stand up and rebuild my life. I chose the second option. I found a small, cheap apartment. Nothing compared to the luxury I once had, but it was mine. I worked long hours at a small hotel as a receptionist. It was humiliating at first, considering I had once managed a five-star establishment, but I swallowed my pride. I needed money, and I needed stability. Every single day, I pushed myself, taking extra shifts, learning more about the business, and proving that I was more than just a woman who had been thrown away. Then, one evening, everything changed. The hotel where I was working was hosting a high-profile business event, and the staff was struggling to keep up. I couldn't stand by and watch everything fall apart, so I stepped in. I took charge, coordinated the service, and made sure the guests were taken care of. That's when I met Ryan. He was standing near the entrance, observing everything with an interested expression. I didn't know who he was at first, but I could tell he was important. Later that night, he approached me. "You handled that situation well," he said. His voice was calm but authoritative, the kind that made people listen. I thanked him, thinking it was just a passing compliment, but then he asked me something unexpected. "Have you ever considered working in a high-end hotel again?" I looked at him, surprised. "I used to. But things changed." He nodded, as if he already knew my story. "I own multiple luxury hotels. I need someone who understands the business, someone who knows how to manage difficult situations. I think you're that person." At first, I thought it was too good to be true. People didn't just walk into your life and offer you a chance like that. But Ryan wasn't just anyone. He saw my potential, and for the first time in a long time, someone believed in me again. I took the job. Working for Ryan was completely different from anything I had experienced before. He was sharp, demanding but fair. He challenged me, pushed me to be better, and slowly, I found my confidence again. My career flourished, and before I knew it, I was managing one of his most prestigious hotels. The woman who had been abandoned and humiliated was now in a position of power again. But that wasn't the only thing that changed. Ryan and I spent a lot of time together, discussing business, strategizing, and making decisions that shaped the future of his hotels. Somewhere along the way, those conversations became more personal. He asked about my past, and for the first time, I told someone everything: the betrayal, the heartbreak, the struggle. He listened, not with pity, but with understanding. And then one night, he told me something that caught me off guard. "Sophia, you're more than what they did to you. You didn't just survive, you rose above it." And I admire that. I didn't know what to say. For so long, I had been carrying the weight of my past, thinking it defined me. But Ryan saw something else, someone who had fought and won. Over time, our relationship shifted. What started as mutual respect turned into something deeper. He wasn't like Daniel. There were no sweet lies, no hidden betrayals. With Ryan, everything was clear and honest. And when he asked me to marry him, I knew my life had finally taken a turn for the better. Becoming Ryan's wife wasn't just about love, it was about reclaiming my power. He didn't just see me as his wife, he saw me as a partner. As a wedding gift, he gave me ownership of 2 luxury restaurants under his hotel chain. It was his way of showing me that he believed in me, that I was capable of running something successful on my own. I had come a long way from the broken woman who had been thrown out onto the streets. Now, I was successful, respected, and loved by a man who truly valued me. But life has a funny way of bringing things full circle. Just when I thought I had left my past behind, fate decided to bring me face to face with the very people who had tried to destroy me. It happened at a grand business event held at one of my restaurants. The place was filled with the wealthiest and most powerful people in the industry. I was walking through the crowd, making sure everything was perfect, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Sophia?" I turned around, and there they were, Daniel and Emma. For a moment, time seemed to stop. It had been years since I had last seen them, but they hadn't changed much. The same arrogance, the same smug expressions. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't the same woman they had abandoned. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise. You work here?" Emma smirked. "I guess life didn't turn out so well for you after all." They thought I was still struggling. They thought I was nothing. I could have told them the truth right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I just smiled, letting them believe what they wanted. Their mockery didn't affect me anymore because I knew something they didn't. This was my restaurant. I owned it. And soon, they would find out in the most satisfying way possible. I turned to a waiter and casually said, "Bring some water to these guests. They seem a little too confident for their own good." I knew what was coming next. And I was ready. Because this time, I was the one in control. The moment was almost surreal. After all these years, there they were, Daniel and Emma, standing in front of me, laughing at what they thought was my downfall. If only they knew. I let them have their moment, let them feel superior. I wasn't going to ruin the surprise just yet. Emma crossed her arms, her eyes filled with that same arrogance she always carried. "Honestly, Sophia, I thought you'd be in a better place by now. A manager at a restaurant?" She laughed. "You really downgraded, didn't you?" Daniel shook his head, a smirk playing on his lips. "I always told you that you wouldn't survive without me. Look at you now, running around like a waitress in someone else's business." I could have responded right then, but I didn't. Instead, I just smiled, a calmness washing over me as I signaled one of my staff members. Within seconds, a waiter approached, holding a tray with 2 glasses of chilled water. "For our special guests," I said softly. The waiter handed them the glasses, and before they could react, he tipped them forward, spilling the ice-cold water onto their expensive designer outfits. A collective gasp spread through the room as Daniel and Emma stumbled back, their shocked expressions priceless. "What the hell's?" Emma shrieked, looking down at her drenched dress. Daniel wiped his face angrily. "Are you out of your mind?" I tilted my head, my smile never fading. "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you both needed to cool off." Emma's face turned red with rage. "You," she started, but then her expression shifted as something clicked in her mind. I watched as she looked around, really looked, at how the staff reacted to me, at how I carried myself, at how no one reprimanded me for what had just happened. Realization dawned on her face, followed closely by pure shock. "Wait a minute," she whispered. She turned to Daniel, who was still too busy fuming to put the pieces together. "Sophia, she's not just working here." Daniel's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" I let the silence stretch, enjoying the moment. Then I leaned forward slightly. "I don't work here," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I own this place." For a second, neither of them spoke. Their stunned expressions were worth every bit of the pain they had put me through. Emma's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Daniel's smirk had disappeared completely. "That's not possible," Daniel muttered. You were nothing after I left you." "There's no way." I shrugged. "And yet here I am. While you two were busy living in your fantasy, I was out here rebuilding my life, creating something better than anything you could ever imagine." I let my words sink in before delivering the final blow. "And just so you know, I didn't just build a business. I married a man who actually values me. A man who sees my worth and treats me as his equal. My husband, Ryan, owns one of the most successful hotel chains in this city. And, as his wife, he made sure I got what I deserved, 2 luxury restaurants under my name, The color drained from their faces. Emma's jealousy was almost tangible, her fists clenched at her sides. Daniel looked like he had swallowed something bitter. They had expected to see me struggling, broken. Instead, they had walked right into the world I had built for myself, one far grander than the life they had stolen from me. "I don't believe this," Emma hissed. "You're lying." I laughed, a genuine, satisfied laugh. "Why would I need to lie? The proof is all around you. Every person in this room knows who I am. This is my world now, Emma, not yours." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. "Sophia, we didn't mean to hurt you. It was a mistake. I made a mistake." His tone had changed now, desperate, almost pleading. "We were young. We were foolish. But you're successful now. You're happy. Isn't that enough?" I saw it then, the regret in his eyes. Not regret for what he had done, but regret that I had risen above it. He wasn't sorry for betraying me. He was sorry that his betrayal hadn't destroyed me. Emma, however, was seething. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" she spat. "You think just because you got lucky—" I cut her off, my voice sharper this time. "Luck had nothing to do with it. Everything I have, I built with my own hands. I worked for it. Unlike you, Emma, I don't need to manipulate and steal to get what I want." She took a step forward, but before she could say another word, I lifted a hand. "I think we're done here. Security?" 2 guards immediately stepped forward, their expressions blank but ready. Daniel's eyes widened. "Wait, what are you doing?" I crossed my arms. "Escorting you out. I don't allow filth in my establishment." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "You can't just throw us out." I smiled. "I can. And I am." The guards moved in, taking them both by the arms. Daniel resisted for a moment, but Emma was too stunned to fight back. "Sophia, please." Daniel tried one last time. "We can talk about this. We made mistakes, but we're still family." I stared at him, feeling nothing but satisfaction. "You stopped being my family the day you betrayed me." And with that, I turned my back on them. The doors swung open, and as they were dragged out into the cold night, I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The past had finally been dealt with, but I wasn't done just yet. I had one last move to make, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. Sophia let out a slow breath, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. There was a moment of silence before she continued, her voice steady, but laced with finality. "I could have let it end there. Kicking them out of my restaurant was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not after everything they had done to me. They had stolen years of my life, left me to suffer while they built their perfect world on top of my pain. And now it was my turn." After that night, I made a few calls. I had kept track of Daniel and Emma, even when I didn't think I would ever need to cross paths with them again. Old habits, I suppose. And what I found out was interesting. Daniel's businesses weren't doing as well as they used to. The market had changed, and without someone like me to help him manage things, cracks had started forming. His investments weren't as smart as he believed, and his partners? Well, let's just say they were losing confidence in him. As for Emma, she was exactly where I expected her to be, playing the role of a perfect wife, clinging to the man she had stolen, thinking that his money would keep her safe forever. They were still living comfortably, but I saw the signs. The desperation. The slow decline. It was only a matter of time before everything they had built started to crumble. And I decided to give fate a little push. Through Ryan's connections, I made sure word spread in the right circles about Daniel's instability as a businessman. Rumors, doubts, the kind of whispers that made investors nervous. I didn't have to lie, his mistakes were real. I just made sure people noticed them. One by one, his deals started falling apart. His credibility? Shattered. His business? Hanging by a thread. But that wasn't enough. I had something else planned. Something more personal. It happened on a quiet evening. I received a message. Daniel wanted to meet. Desperation had finally driven him to me. I agreed, choosing a private lounge in one of my hotels. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at the far end of the dimly lit room. He looked different, tired, older, the weight of his failures dragging him down. Sophia, he said as I approached. His voice had lost that arrogant edge. Thank you for meeting me. I sat across from him, crossing my legs calmly. What do you want, Daniel? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I need help. He hesitated before adding, From you? I raised an eyebrow. Help? From the woman you abandoned? The woman you humiliated?
His jaw tightened.
I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But things are difficult right now. Business isn't what it used to be. Investors are backing out, and I just need someone with your experience. I laughed, shaking my head. Let me guess. Emma doesn't know how to fix your mess, does she? His expression darkened, but he didn't deny it. I leaned forward slightly. You had everything, Daniel. A wife who loved you, a successful business, a stable life. And you threw it all away for my stepsister. Now you want me to fix the mess you made? Tell me, why would I ever help you? His lips parted, but before he could respond, the doors opened. Emma walked in, looking like she had seen a ghost. Her eyes darted between me and Daniel, suspicion clouding her face.
What's going on? She demanded.
I smiled. Your husband asked me for help. Seems like things aren't going so well in your little paradise. Her face twisted in anger.
You think you're so smart, don't you?
You think you've won. I stood up, adjusting my coat. Emma, I won the moment you betrayed me. Everything you did to break me only made me stronger. And now you're both drowning in the mess you created. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. Sophia, please. I cut him off with a raised hand. No, Daniel. You made your choices. Now you live with them. As I turned to leave, I made one last move, the final stroke of my revenge. I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. Within moments, the doors swung open again. This time, 2 police officers stepped inside. Emma's face went pale. What is this? I turned back, my smile cold. Justice. Daniel shot up from his seat. What the hell is going on? I handed the officers a folder. Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, the list is long. You thought you could cheat your way through business, Daniel, but the law doesn't work that way. Emma stumbled back. This is a mistake. You can't do this. I tilted my head. Oh, but I can. And I just did. The officers stepped forward, reading Daniel his rights as they handcuffed him. Emma tried to fight, but it was no use. Her perfect world had come crashing down around her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. As they were led away, Daniel turned back one last time, his face filled with regret. Sophia, I'm sorry. But his apology meant nothing. I walked out of the lounge, stepping into the cool night air, feeling lighter than I had in years. The past was finally behind me. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak. It no longer held any power over me. I had rebuilt my life. I had found love again. And most importantly, I had gotten the justice I deserved. They say karma works in mysterious ways, but I prefer to think of it as balance. And tonight, everything was exactly where it was meant to be.